You know how people say you don't get to choose your family, but you do get to choose how much of them you let into your life? I used to think that was just one of those Pinterest quotes people share when they're annoyed at their in-laws. But now, at 31 years old, I finally get it. My name's Kyle, and I guess you could say I was the designated background character in my own family. The quiet one, the easygoing one, the one who didn't stir the pot. My older sister Rachel? She was the main character. The storm and the sun, depending on the day. And my parents? Well, they revolved around her like she was their personal North Star. I was born 3 years after Rachel, and from the jump, it was always Rachel this, Rachel that. She danced ballet. My mom signed up for every bake sale. I made varsity soccer. My dad said, "That's great, buddy," then walked out mid-game to take Rachel to her piano recital. I didn't resent it at first. That's just how things were. Rachel was dramatic, emotional, magnetic. I was steady, reliable, invisible. I figured if I kept my head down and didn't ask for too much, I'd avoid drama. That became a pattern, me stepping aside so Rachel could take center stage. Birthdays, graduations, even Christmas. One year I got a hoodie. She got a freaking MacBook because she needed it for college applications. She was in 10th grade. Still, I never said much. I moved out after college, landed a stable job in tech, and built a quiet life for myself. I didn't visit home often, but not because I was angry. I just liked peace. I had a small circle, a decent apartment, and eventually, I met someone who made everything click. Her name was Tessa, and she was grounding. Funny, kind, the type who remembered birthdays and asked deep questions and always saw me. We dated for 3 years before I proposed. Nothing flashy. Just us on a quiet beach with a thermos of hot cider and a ring I'd saved up for over months. She cried. I cried. It was the happiest moment of my life. And then Thanksgiving happened. Or didn't happen, I should say. See, my family has always made a big deal out of Thanksgiving. My parents host. Everyone flies in. There's way too much food and awkward board games and Dad trying to carve the turkey like he's Gordon Ramsay. I was actually excited this year because it would be Tessa's first Thanksgiving with my side of the family. She'd met my parents once, briefly, but this would be the big introduction. I even started practicing how I'd announce our engagement, maybe with a toast, maybe while we passed the pie. I had it all planned out. But then, about a week before the holiday, I got a call from my mom. Her voice was quiet, almost rehearsed. "Hey, honey. Listen, your dad and I were talking, and we think maybe this year, it's best if you sit Thanksgiving out." I blinked. Wait, what? It's just, with everything Rachel's going through right now. You know, the divorce. Rachel and her husband, Evan, had been separated for a few months. It was messy, lots of crying, dramatic Facebook posts, even a smashed windshield, hers, not his. But last I heard, she was the one who initiated the split. "I know she's hurting," I said slowly. "But what does that have to do with me?" "Well, we just think it'd be too painful for her to see you and Tessa right now. You're engaged, she's not. It might be too much." I didn't say anything for a second because I genuinely didn't know what to say. "So you're uninviting me? Because Rachel might get sad." "It's not like that, Kyle. We love you. We're proud of you. We just think this year, it's about keeping the peace. You understand, right?" I didn't understand. Not even a little. But I said, "Sure, Mom. Whatever's best." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Tessa found me on the couch a few minutes later, staring at the wall. I told her what happened, tried to laugh it off, but my voice cracked halfway through. She just wrapped her arms around me and said, "You don't have to explain. I get it." We ended up staying home for Thanksgiving. Just the two of us. We made stuffing from a box and burned the cranberry sauce. We watched old holiday movies and played Scrabble. I tried to enjoy it. I really did. But something gnawed at me the whole day, not just the uninviting, but the way my parents had said it. Like it was obvious. Like I should have expected it. Like Rachel's sadness trumped my joy by default. Then came Saturday. Tessa was scrolling through Instagram on the couch, half laughing at dog reels, when she froze. "Kyle," she said, her voice tight. "Come here." She handed me her phone. It was a photo from Rachel's page. She was standing in my parents' dining room, holding a mimosa and grinning ear to ear. She wore a sparkly beige dress, and her makeup looked freshly done. The table was full, stuffing, pie, turkey, even Mom's weird green bean casserole. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was Evan. He was standing right next to her, smiling. His arm was around her waist. What? I whispered. Tessa bit her lip. Maybe it's an old picture? But then I swiped. Another photo. This time Rachel was holding a plate of pie. The caption said, "Pumpkin season is healing season. Hashtag Thanksgiving." There were tags. My parents. My cousins. Evan. It wasn't an old picture. They had all been there. Evan included. The man she was supposedly too heartbroken over to be in the same room with me and Tessa. They'd lied. Not just to protect Rachel's feelings, but to exclude me. I wish I could say I called my mom right then and there and demanded answers. But I didn't. I stared at those pictures for a long time, my heart pounding, 1,000 thoughts racing through my head. And then, for the first time in a long time, something inside me snapped. Because this wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It wasn't just about one lie. It was about every single time I'd taken the back seat so Rachel could feel special. Every time I kept quiet to keep the peace. Every moment I smiled while being sidelined. And I realized something I probably should have realized years ago. I wasn't family to them. I was a prop. A convenience. Someone they could silence, sideline, or sacrifice if it made Rachel's life smoother. And that's when I started thinking. Planning. Because if they didn't want me to be part of their family, then maybe it was time they saw what it looked like when I stopped playing along. And what happened next? Well, let's just say Thanksgiving was the beginning of the end. I didn't confront them. Not right away. Instead, I let the silence hang. For once, I didn't reach out. I didn't call my mom to ask how the turkey turned out. I didn't text my dad the usual, "Hope you had a good one." I didn't comment on Rachel's post or drop a sarcastic emoji. I just vanished from the family group chat like I'd never existed. It took them 5 days to notice. On the 6th day, Mom finally texted. Just one line. "Hey sweetie, everything okay? Haven't heard from you." I stared at it for a while, then locked my phone and set it face down on the coffee table. Tessa and I had just gotten back from a walk through the park. The leaves were turning, that kind of golden brown that makes you nostalgic for things that haven't even happened yet. We sat down on the couch, mugs of hot tea in hand, and she asked gently, "You gonna talk to them?" I shook my head. Not yet. She didn't press. She never did. That's one of the things I love most about her. She doesn't force things to be okay. She just sits with me in the quiet until I'm ready. 2 days later, another text came in. "Kyle, are you mad at us?" I didn't answer that one either. Then came the call. Mom again. I let it ring out. She tried again 2 hours later, then followed it with a voicemail. Her voice was upbeat, cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Hey honey, just wanted to say hi. We miss you. Your dad says hi. Rachel might be coming over this weekend for a girls' night, but we'd love to do dinner with you and Tessa soon. Let me know." I played it twice. The first time in disbelief. The second time in something colder, something I didn't want to name yet. Girls' night. Right. With her still married husband, apparently. Weeks passed. I kept my distance. Tessa and I focused on our engagement, made tentative wedding plans. We wanted something small and meaningful, maybe a mountaintop ceremony, just us and a few friends. I didn't mention it to my family. Not once. And not because I forgot. Then, right before Christmas, my dad finally broke the silence. He showed up. At my apartment. I didn't even know he knew my address. But there he was, standing outside the door in a heavy coat, knocking like he had every right to be there. I opened it just enough to lean against the frame. "Hey, can I come in?" he asked, rubbing his gloved hands together. "It's freezing." I didn't move. "What do you want, Dad?" He blinked. "What do I?" "Kyle, what's going on?" "Your mom's been worried sick." I raised an eyebrow. "Worried enough to call me before Thanksgiving?" He frowned. "That's not fair. We did call you." "No," I said. "You called to tell me not to come." A long pause. "She was hurting, Kyle. We were just trying to keep things from getting worse." I stared at him. "She posted selfies with her husband, Dad." His jaw tightened. "That's complicated." "No." I snapped, the words bubbling up before I could stop them. "It's not. What's complicated is you asking me to step aside so Rachel can keep pretending she's the victim in a breakup she started." He looked away. "You lied," I said, softer now. "You chose her. Again. Like always." "I didn't choose." "Stop." The hallway was quiet except for the hum of the heater. "I've always made it easy for you," I said. "I've never caused problems. I never complained when you skipped my games. I never brought up how you spent $5,000 on Rachel's birthday trip to Cabo and told me to be grateful for a Target gift card. I never said anything when she crashed my car and you told me to be the bigger person. I let it all go. Because I thought if I just kept being good, you'd eventually see me. His eyes flickered. But you never did, I said. And now I'm done trying. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, finally, he nodded slowly. If that's how you feel. It is. He turned to go. Oh, and Dad. I added. He paused. We're getting married in June. We'll be sending invites soon. You don't have to come. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it again. He left without saying another word. I shut the door. My hands were shaking. Tessa was in the kitchen, silent, watching. When I finally looked at her, she nodded once. Good, she said. Christmas came and went. No presents. No calls. Just another set of photos on Instagram. Rachel in matching pajamas with my parents. Evan beside her again. Caption. Sometimes healing means surrounding yourself with the ones who always show up. Hashtag family first. That one stung more than the others. Maybe because it wasn't just a photo. It was a message. They weren't just ignoring me. They were replacing me. Rewriting the narrative to paint Rachel as the golden child and me as the bitter outsider. And the worst part? They believed it. January was quiet. Too quiet. I stopped checking Rachel's page, unfollowed her eventually. I figured maybe this was just my new reality, a clean break. A sad one, but clean. Then came February. And with it, the betrayal that finally shattered the illusion I'd been holding on to since I was a kid. It started with a text from my cousin Lauren. We weren't close, but we saw each other enough at family events to stay friendly. Hey Kyle, super random question. Are you registered at Crate and Barrel? I blinked. I hadn't told anyone in the extended family about our wedding yet. No. What? Weird. Just gotta save the date for your wedding. Says registries at Crate and Barrel. Thought it might be fake. My stomach turned cold. I called her immediately. What did the invite look like? I asked. It was like beige with gold lettering. Said Kyle and Tessa in script. Had a June date. Same last name. I figured it was you. I rubbed my temple. Can you send me a picture? She did. It was my name. And Tessa's. But the email to RSVP back was one I didn't recognize. And the venue? Some fancy event space 3 towns over. We hadn't even booked anything yet. Someone was pretending to host our wedding. I showed Tessa the photo. Her face drained. Is this a scam? I don't think so, I said slowly. I think it's worse. I scrolled down the invite and found it, clear as day. Hosted lovingly by Michael and Denise Henderson. My parents' names. My heart was pounding. They had fabricated an entire wedding event. In our names. Without telling us. And the guest list? I didn't even want to know. I called my mom. She didn't answer. I called again. Then Dad. Same result. Finally, I messaged Rachel. Hey, did you send out wedding invites in my name? She replied instantly. Relax. Mom and Dad just wanted to help you out. You've been so distant lately, they figured you were overwhelmed. We thought it'd be a nice surprise. I stared at the message. A surprise. They'd hijacked my wedding planning. Decided they knew better. Invited people I hadn't spoken to in years. Claimed they were helping, all while cutting me out of every decision. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Tessa sat beside me, reading over my shoulder. Her hand found mine. We need to talk to them. Now. I nodded. But I didn't call this time. I drove. We got in the car that night, snow still on the ground, tires crunching over icy patches as I clenched the steering wheel. My parents lived 40 minutes away, but that night, it felt like hours. When we arrived, their lights were on. Evan's car was in the driveway. I knocked hard. Mom opened the door, surprised. Kyle, honey, you should have called. We would have. I held up the invite. She paled. What is this? She glanced behind her, then stepped outside, closing the door behind her. It was just a gesture, she said quickly. You've been distant. We didn't know what your plans were, and we didn't want people to think you weren't including family. So you just made it up? I said, voice rising. You picked a venue, created an email, and told people you were hosting my wedding? You're our son, she said. We were just trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to control it. Like everything else. She folded her arms. You're being dramatic. That word. Dramatic. Like Rachel. The one who blew up over everything and still got protected. And here I was, finally setting a boundary, and I was the problem. Tessa stepped forward. Her voice was calm but icy. We're planning our wedding. Not you. Not Rachel. Not Evan. Us. And if you can't respect that, you're not coming. My mom blinked, like Tessa had slapped her. We just wanted to feel included. I let out a bitter laugh. You had one chance. One. To include us. You uninvited me from Thanksgiving. You lied. And now this. She looked hurt. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I stepped back. No, I said. You already did that. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't stepping back anymore. I was stepping away. And the next part? That's when the real revenge began. It's funny how silence can feel louder than shouting. The ride home after that confrontation was quiet. Not the tense kind of silence, but the heavy, exhausted kind. Like both Tessa and I had just run a marathon we didn't sign up for. My hands were still clenching the wheel too tightly, and hers were in her lap, twisting the sleeve of her coat around her fingers. The only sound was the rhythmic swoosh of the windshield wipers brushing away light flurries. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew something had changed. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was a fracture. A deep, irreparable crack. I felt it in my bones. And yet, I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not when my dad finally texted me the next day saying, "Your mother's very upset. We were only trying to help. If you want to move forward, let us know." That line, "if you want to move forward," sat in my gut like a cold stone. Like the responsibility to fix everything was mine. Again, I left it on read. The truth was, I didn't have it in me anymore. To explain. To defend. To apologize for not being who they wanted. I was tired. Tired of always being the buffer between their dysfunction and my own peace. Tired of being the afterthought who was expected to be grateful for crumbs. And in the weeks that followed, I slipped into something close to depression. I still got up every day. I still showered, brushed my teeth, answered emails. But I wasn't really there. I was running on autopilot. My appetite vanished. I lost weight. I started dodging calls from friends. When my cousin Lauren messaged me to ask if everything was okay, because Rachel just told everyone the wedding was postponed due to your mental health issues, I didn't even respond. I just closed my laptop and went to bed in the middle of the afternoon. That lie hit me hard. Not because it was unexpected, but because it felt so perfectly calculated to make them look like the compassionate victims. Poor Kyle, he's struggling again. We're just so heartbroken we had to postpone the wedding. The narrative was already taking shape, and I could feel myself disappearing from my own story. The worst part? A small, bitter part of me started to believe it. That maybe I was the problem. That maybe I was too sensitive, too distant, too cold. That maybe my parents had tried their best, and I'd just failed to be the kind of son they could love properly. But then, one morning in early March, I woke up to Tessa on the balcony of our apartment, phone in hand, tears in her eyes. I rushed out, thinking something had happened, but when I asked what was wrong, she just handed me her phone. It was a message from her mom. "Sweetheart, I've been thinking. Kyle deserves better than this. You both do. If you want to do something just for you two, we'll support it. Financially, logistically, emotionally. No strings. Just let us help." I read it twice, then a third time, and for the first time in months, I felt something stir in me. It wasn't anger. It was hope. Tessa's parents had always been kind, but distant in a respectful way, never intrusive, never overbearing. Her dad was a quiet, observant type, the kind of guy who watched everything and said little. Her mom was the opposite, warm, chatty, always baking something, but she never overstepped. And now, here they were, offering us a lifeline. Not just financially, but emotionally. And something about that broke the dam I didn't know I was holding back. I sat down on the balcony beside her, took her hand, and whispered, "Okay, let's do this our way." That's how the rebuilding began. Not in a grand, sweeping way, but in quiet, deliberate steps. We started by canceling everything. The fake registry, the fake email, the venue that my parents had somehow put a deposit on without our knowledge. Turns out Rachel helped them set it up, just in case Kyle changes his mind, she told one of my cousins. I called the vendors, explained the situation with as much professionalism as I could muster, and then I opened a blank spreadsheet. We made a new wedding plan. This time, it was just us. We decided to rent a cabin in the mountains with a wraparound porch and a view that looked like it belonged on a postcard. The guest list? No more than 20 people. No plus ones unless we knew them personally. No photographers we didn't trust. No staged moments. Just love. Just real. And for the first time, wedding planning felt fun. We chose everything ourselves. The music, the vows, the food. We went with wood-fired pizza and a build-your-own Esmores bar. Tessa wore a simple dress she found on Etsy. I bought a navy blue suit from a local shop. We invited her parents, my cousin Lauren, a few of my close college friends, and a handful of her longtime childhood buddies. That was it. Not a single Henderson. And the strangest thing? It didn't feel empty. It felt right. But the rebuilding didn't stop with the wedding. With the help of Tessa, and maybe, finally, the space to see things clearly, I started making other changes. I set boundaries with people who used to drain me. I turned down family Zoom calls where I knew I'd be asked passive-aggressive questions. I even got a new phone number and only gave it out to people who genuinely cared. I started going to therapy, something I'd always said I'd get around to someday. In our first session, I told my therapist that I felt like a ghost in my own family. He nodded and said something I'll never forget. That's because you were trained to disappear. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was new information, but because it was the first time someone else said it out loud. He didn't frame it as a weakness. He framed it as survival. As something I'd learned to do in order to stay sane in a household where love was conditional and peace always came at my expense. He helped me see that stepping away wasn't betrayal. It was healing. That summer, Tessa and I got married in the mountains under a sky that looked like it had been painted just for us. The air smelled like pine and lavender. Her dad walked her down the aisle, and when we said our vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the cabin, including mine. We didn't live stream it. We didn't post pictures until weeks later. We didn't do any of the performative stuff that used to feel obligatory. It wasn't about proving anything. It was just about us. And when we got back home, there was a letter in our mailbox. No return address. Just my name, written in careful cursive. Inside was a card. We're sorry we missed the wedding. We heard it was small and beautiful. We're hurt you didn't want us there, but we hope one day you'll come around. Family is forever. There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting. My mother had always prided herself on her penmanship. I read it once, then again, and then I put it in the shredder, not out of anger, but out of peace. Because that version of me, the one who would have written back, apologized, explained, he didn't exist anymore. I wasn't living in their story now. I was writing my own. And as it turned out, it was a better story. One where I was finally the main character. One where I didn't have to apologize for being happy. And just when I thought things had finally settled, just when I started to believe the worst was behind me, I got a message that changed everything. A message that would drag me right back into the drama I thought I'd escaped. And this time, I wouldn't be stepping away quietly. I'd be stepping in with receipts. It was a Wednesday when the message came in. I'd just gotten back from a client call and was halfway through reheating leftover pizza when my phone buzzed with a notification. Not a name I recognized at first glance, just a random Gmail address in my inbox. Subject line, you should probably see this. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a Google Drive link and one line of text beneath it. She's not who you think she is. I hovered over the link, suspicious. Tessa glanced over from the couch. Spam. Maybe, I muttered. But I clicked it anyway. It opened to a folder titled, Screenshots, Rachel's Group Chat. And just like that, my stomach dropped. Inside were dozens of screenshots, text messages, Instagram DMs, even some voice notes. All of them from a group chat titled, Henderson Wedding War Room. The participants? My mom, my sister Rachel, and a few of Rachel's close friends I hadn't seen since college. Not Evan, curiously, but a few of his sisters were in the chat, chiming in here and there with snide commentary. The first screenshot was dated months before Thanksgiving. Rachel. Okay, but if Kyle thinks he's just going to show up and steal the spotlight with his little Pinterest engagement, he's dumber than I thought, LOL. Mom. Let's not be mean, sweetie. But yes, we need to be careful. This can't turn into Kyle and Tessa, the holiday special. It's not fair to you. Rachel. Exactly. Like I'm going through a divorce and now I have to pretend to be happy for them? Pass. Mom. We'll figure something out. Maybe suggest they sit out this year. We'll say it's about your healing. Rachel. God, I love you. I stopped reading. My hands were shaking. The pizza sat forgotten on the counter behind me. Tessa stood up, walked over silently, and looked over my shoulder. I clicked into the next screenshot. Then the next. It only got worse. Rachel later. LMAO Evan said he'll come to Thanksgiving if there's pie. Should we make it chocolate so Kyle really gets the message? Mom. Let's not be petty, but yes. He hates chocolate. Rachel. Consider it done. There were dozens more like it. them mocking our wedding plans, calling Tessa generic, joking about how Kyle probably still thinks we're being nice to keep the family together. One even had my dad chiming in. Dad, it's just easier to let Rachel feel like she's the priority. Kyle doesn't hold grudges. He'll bounce back like always. That one hurt the most. Because it was true. I had always bounced back. Quietly. Without complaint. And they were counting on that again. Only this time, I wasn't bouncing. I kept scrolling, screenshot after screenshot, until I hit one that nearly made me drop the phone. Rachel, 3 weeks ago. Okay, so I was thinking, what if we just make a new Instagram account for their wedding? Post some pics, tag Crate and Barrel, make it look real. That way people stop asking questions, and we can control the vibe. Kyle barely uses social anyway. Mom, that's smart. Can we pull photos from Pinterest or something? Rachel, already on it. Just found one with a couple that looks kinda like them from behind. Mom, you're amazing. Truly. My ears were hot. My heart was pounding in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And yet, everything suddenly made sense. The fake wedding, the emails, the silent treatment. It was all coordinated. A slow, premeditated erasure of me and Tessa. And now I had proof. But I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. Instead, something settled into place, calm, focused, cold. I looked at Tessa, who had turned white as a sheet. You okay? She whispered. I nodded once. No, but I know what I'm going to do. The first step was simple. I downloaded everything. Every screenshot. Every file. Organized them by date and topic, added context in a separate Google document. I wasn't about to let anything get lost in translation. If I was going to war with my family, I needed my armor airtight. I had no idea who sent the email. Still don't, to this day. Maybe someone in the group chat had grown a conscience. Maybe someone's kid found it and thought I deserved to know. I didn't care. All that mattered was that I had it. Then came phase 2. Silence. No confrontations. No warning shots. I didn't block them. I didn't even unfriend them. Instead, I waited. Because the best revenge, I was beginning to realize, isn't loud. It's strategic. And the first real opportunity came sooner than I expected. Tessa and I had sent out physical invitations for our real wedding a few weeks before. Small, handmade, minimalist design. We sent them to our inner circle and a few distant family members I did trust. Lauren got one, of course. So did a couple of my dad's old cousins who always remembered my birthday, even when my parents didn't. Then one morning, I got a text from Lauren. Lauren, heads up, Rachel just posted a TikTok saying she's officiating your wedding. I blinked. Officiating? I jumped on TikTok, pulled up her profile, still public, and there it was. A 30-second video of her in front of a mirror, practicing a speech. Caption, can't believe I get to officiate my baby brother's big day. He always wanted me there for this moment. Hashtag wedding season, hashtag blessed. Tessa watched over my shoulder, equal parts horrified and amused. I mean, bold of her to just invent a job like that. I chuckled, bitterly. And then I had an idea. The kind that starts as a whisper in your brain, but quickly becomes a shout. What if we let her keep thinking she was in control? What if we leaned in, just enough to make them believe they'd won? And then, at the perfect moment, pulled the rug out from under them? I started making calls. Lauren was the first. She came over the next day, laptop in hand, and we laid everything out. The screenshots, the TikTok, the fake invites. She was furious, not just on my behalf, but for how easily the rest of the family was being duped. Honestly, she said, the way they treat you. I'm not even surprised. But I am done pretending. So I gave her a role, document handler. She would manage the timeline of receipts. If anyone tried to twist the story later, we'd be ready with facts. Next, we brought in James, an old friend from college who now worked in event security. He agreed to work our wedding for free, under one condition. You let me tackle someone if they show up uninvited. Tempting, I said, but just walk them out. Nicely. We also looped in a friend of Tessa's named Priya, a digital marketing whiz who helped us craft a public-facing version of our story, one that didn't spill all the tea, but hinted just enough to control the narrative. We made a wedding website. On the homepage, a personal message from us. After much reflection, we've chosen to celebrate our love quietly, with those who've always respected our boundaries. If you didn't receive a personal invitation, we kindly ask that you celebrate from afar and honor our space. This is a joyful, intentional gathering, not a spectacle. We didn't name names, but we didn't need to. And then, in the officiant section, a picture of our actual officiant, my high school English teacher, Mrs. Kramer, a woman who had encouraged me to write, believed in me when I was just a quiet teen in the back row, and who cried when I invited her. I made the site unlisted, but Lauren made sure it got shared in the right Facebook groups. Within 2 days, Rachel's TikTok was deleted. Within 3, Mom messaged me for the first time in over a month. Mom, Kyle, I don't understand what's going on. Why are people saying we're not invited? I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I updated the RSVP system on the site to include a filter. If your name wasn't on the approved list, you got this message. Thank you for your interest, but we're unable to accommodate additional guests. Wishing you peace and love from afar. It worked beautifully. One by one, the dominoes fell. Rachel posted a cryptic Instagram story. Some people forget who was there for them first. While Mom commented under an old photo of me and Tessa, I miss you. You'll regret this someday. Dad, radio silence. I knew what they were doing, trying to guilt me back into the role I'd always played. The peacemaker, the one who bent so others didn't break. But that version of me was gone, and in his place was someone stronger, someone who wasn't afraid to say no. And as the wedding drew closer, with every RSVP confirmed and every plan finalized, I could feel the moment building. The moment where they'd realize they weren't just being excluded. They were being exposed. And I had one final card to play, one that would make sure everyone finally saw them for who they really were. All I had to do was wait for the perfect time to flip it. The morning of the wedding was still, not quiet. There were birds chirping and a gentle wind rustling the trees. But still, in that sacred way that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath for something important. The cabin sat tucked away on a mountain ridge, surrounded by evergreens and soft golden light. It was the kind of morning you wish you could bottle and keep forever. Tessa looked ethereal. No fancy makeup. No cathedral veil. Just her, in a simple ivory dress, hair loosely pinned, smile radiant. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie, watching her reflection as she laughed with her best friend Priya, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. That's what surprised me most. Not the calm before the storm. The calm during it. Because I knew the storm was coming. And this time, I was the one who'd brought the clouds. The ceremony was perfect. Mrs. Kramer officiated like she was born to do it. Warm, poetic, funny in all the right places. Our vows made half the guests cry. Even James, the ex-linebacker security guy, wiped a tear before pretending he had something in his eye. We toasted, we danced, we ate wood-fired pizza, and sipped mulled wine by the fire. There were Polaroids and handwritten letters from friends. Stories. Hugs. No drama. And then, just after the sun dipped below the horizon, James got a buzz in his earpiece and looked over at me from across the yard. He raised a single eyebrow. The signal. They were here. Rachel, Mom, Dad, and, for good measure, 2 of Rachel's old high school friends in matching dresses like it was their red carpet. They weren't on the guest list. But they came anyway. Bold, entitled, and exactly on cue. James met them halfway down the gravel path. Tessa and I watched from the porch, hidden behind one of the pine beams. Rachel led the charge, of course. We're here for the wedding, she said, brushing a curl over her shoulder like this was all perfectly normal. James folded his arms. And your names? You know who we are. I do. That's why I'm asking. Rachel scoffed. You've got to be kidding me. My mother stepped in then, hands folded like she was preparing for a sermon. We're family, she said softly, trying that old, concerned matriarch voice she always used when guilt-tripping me as a kid. Sure, James said calmly. And you're not on the list. We don't need to be on a list, Rachel snapped. This is my brother's wedding. James reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. I recognized it. So did they. It was the same envelope I'd mailed them 6 weeks ago. Empty. Just their names. No invitation. I think you do, James said, handing it to Rachel. She tore it open like maybe, this time it would magically contain an invite. Like I'd changed my mind at the last minute. Like she still mattered more than consequences. But it was still empty. Just a folded card that read, "This space reserved for someone who respects boundaries. Better luck next time." Rachel's mouth fell open. Mom went pale. And Dad? He turned to leave. That was the moment I knew. He knew it was over. Rachel, on the other hand, wasn't done. She tried to march past James, heels sinking into the gravel. "You can't stop me," she hissed. "This is public property." "No," James said. "It's not. It's a private venue. Booked under a private party license. You trespass, I call the sheriff." "You wouldn't." He raised a brow. "Try me." Rachel's friend piped up. "You guys are seriously insane. He's your brother. Rachel loved you." "Rachel used me," I said, stepping into view. They all turned at once. I was still in my wedding suit, but I stood taller than I ever had before. "Used me," I repeated. "Lied about me. Tried to erase me from my own life. And now? You're shocked I finally drew a line." Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but I kept going. "You faked a wedding in my name. Mocked my fiancée. Mocked me. Built a group chat to plan my humiliation like it was a party game. And even after we gave you a way to quietly back off, you came here. Uninvited. On our day. Because you really believed it was still about you." Mom looked like she might cry. "Kyle, we just wanted to be part of it." "No," I said coldly. "You wanted control. You wanted a show. You don't get either." And then I pulled out my final card. I reached into my coat pocket and handed Rachel a small USB stick. "What's this?" "Everything," I said. "Your texts. Your group chat. Your voice notes. The lies. The manipulation. All compiled. All backed up. One copy went to every family member who got your fake wedding invite. Another went to Evan's lawyer. Because I figured if you're this bold with me, you're probably just as reckless with your divorce proceedings." Her face dropped. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I nodded to Priya, who stood on the porch with her laptop. She hit play. A speaker by the door crackled to life. Rachel's voice. "Kyle probably still thinks we're being nice to keep the family together. He's so dumb. Let him plan his little fairy tale. We'll take over when it matters." Mom gasped. Dad stepped back, rubbing his eyes. "Turn that off," Rachel screamed. I waved to Priya. She stopped it after 5 seconds. "Plenty more where that came from," I said quietly. Silence. Then, finally, Rachel broke. She turned on my mom. "Why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you tell me he had that?" Mom didn't answer. Because what could she say? They'd lost. And everyone knew it. Tessa came to stand beside me then. She didn't say a word. Just slid her hand into mine. It was over. No yelling. No chaos. Just a slow, devastating collapse of everything they'd tried to build on lies. James stepped forward one last time. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Rachel looked like she might protest, but my dad, silent until now, put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go." His voice was flat, hollow, like something had finally clicked. They turned and left. No goodbyes. Just footsteps crunching down the gravel, fading into the woods. We went back inside and rejoined the party. The music played. Laughter returned. The fire crackled as the stars came out one by one. Later that night, as the last few guests were gathered around the S. Moret's bar and Mrs. Kramer gave an impromptu poetry reading, Lauren came up to me with a glass of cider. She raised it. "To peace." "To truth," I said. We clinked. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally chosen myself. That's the thing about family. Sometimes it's the people who raise you. And sometimes it's the people who help you rise. I'll never forget what it felt like watching them walk away. But I'll also never forget what it felt like walking back inside, with my wife, my friends, my real family, knowing I'd finally closed the door. For good. And this time, I didn't look back.